Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me, everyone, today. It's a pleasure to have you on this webinar where we're going to be talking about diversity, race, gender, bias, and all the issues, that affect society today in terms of leadership and organizational structure and the actions that organizations take to deal with and address these issues. So, we've got various different categorizations, as you know, that, we like to place ourselves into as human beings. We like to box everything up and put everything into a category, a group, or a class. We categorize people by race, by color, by religion, by ethnicity, even within a country where everyone is the same nationality and probably even the same color. We still categorize ourselves further into ethnicities. What part of the country do we come from? What accent do we have? What line of descent do we have? We always find ways to put ourselves into boxes and then even tinier boxes after that. We love categorization. And because of that, we have issues dealing with people or accepting people from different racial backgrounds, from different religions, different colors, different sexual orientations, different ethnicities, whatever you want to call it. We tend to create these issues for ourselves as human beings. And that has been the case, as far as I know, since the dawn of time. If you go into any historical document, you will find that some, if not all of these issues existed in one way or another. So, what do we do? What have we experienced in terms of our leadership journey and in terms of our working careers in different organizations within these areas? What I found is that what we have done is we've taken some steps, right? Hands up any of you who've never been prejudiced against. You've never experienced any discrimination or prejudice of any kind. It could be anything. I've lived in Scotland, I've lived in the United Kingdom, I've worked in the United States for small periods of time. I grew up in Southern Africa, between South Africa and Zimbabwe, and I've come across all kinds of different discriminations that have been part of my life and part of the lives of my family and friends and people I know. We grew up in societies where discrimination and prejudice and apartheid were the order of the day. And so I know firsthand what that is like. If any of you have never experienced it, then you're very lucky, because most people have experienced it in one way or another, even within your own countries. Like I mentioned, a different accent from a different part of the country. In the UK, you could be from the north, from Geordieland, from Newcastle and Sunderland and places like that. You could be from the Midlands, from Birmingham. You could be from the south, places like London and other places. Now, having lived in the UK for over 25 years now, I have seen people being prejudiced towards each other based on what part of the country they come from and what accent they have. So the UK is by no means immune to that form of prejudice and discrimination. Sometimes it's done in a joking way. Sometimes it's really lighthearted. But sometimes there's something else underlying it, like a perception that people in the South are more exposed to business and wealth opportunities than people in the North. Okay? And I could go on and on about this. The same thing happens in so many different other countries that I've been to. So what do we do as organizations? As organizations, we come up with policies, don't we? We get a panel of people, of HR experts, legal experts, people from various different parts of the organization. So we create a panel of diverse people to come up with policies on diversity. A lot of these are government-led, government incentivized, guidelines issued by the government, and so on and so forth. But the bottom line is they are policies, and they're created by a panel of people. And then we go a step further and we say, well, so we've got a diversity policy which is going to cater for the action we're going to take on gender bias so that we ensure that we treat women equally in our organizations and our societies, so that we treat women and pay them equally as their male counterparts do. Now, we know that that's another subject that policies don't seem to deal with. They don't seem to touch upon. There are so many cases that you will see in the news where females, it doesn't matter what race they are, the fact that they are females just means that automatically, right, by societal and organizational standards, you may argue with this, you may disagree with it, you may contest it, but the evidence is there. Women in general, in any part of the world, are treated as lesser beings, lesser citizens. They're probably, I'll speak from my own experience. I have worked with women in so many different organizations, and what I have seen and witnessed firsthand is that they are extremely intelligent, very hardworking, emotionally more intelligent and capable, and do an absolutely brilliant job. And yet, in most instances, they are paid less. They may get the praise, they may get the recognition, but the bottom line is the money that goes into their bank account is less than their male counterparts. Fact. So we come up with policies which address that, but don't address the salary issue. We also have policies that address diversity, including people from different racial backgrounds. There's been a major drive to that in society in general. Again, via panels. Let's recruit from a diverse panel, and let's make sure that in our recruitment drive, we bring in some Black Americans, African Americans. We bring in some Africans, Black Africans. We bring in some white Africans. We bring in some Asian Africans. We bring in some Asians. We will go into such great detail to make sure that we've recruited at least one person from every little box category that we've put them into, so that we can marvel upon it and say, we've done a fantastic job. We've got a policy on diversity, which we've enforced or enacted by having a panel of people to recruit from a diverse candidate base. So the word diversity is in everything we do. So now we've got a diverse panel, diverse policies. We've even got a diverse team now, and we can look at them and see the difference in these people. We can see their different racial denominations. We can hear their different accents. And when we talk to them, we find out about their religions. And it seems all great. And it is. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking that at all. It is absolutely fantastic. As a person who is a South African citizen, it's one of my biggest pleasures to see people of every color, creed, denomination, categorization, sexual orientation, whatever box we put ourselves in. I like to see people getting along, working together. So that's fantastic. So why then do we still have problems in our organizations and societies where we've got all this going? Okay, most of you will say, this takes time, this takes decades. This may take 100 years before we can see the benefits of all this diversification effort that we are putting into things. That may be a fair point, but do we have 100 years to wait? We've already waited many hundreds of years. Do we have another 100 years to wait? My answer to that would be no. My answer is we need to be putting more effort into making these things a reality and not just things that sit on a piece of paper in a policy in someone's drawer that they pull out as soon as an issue comes up. For example, you might experience something in your workplace, some racism, or you may speak out on behalf of someone else and take it to a manager, take it to an HR person and say, listen, I've experienced some racism, or I've experienced a challenge with, myself being a woman in a male-based society or organization. I've experienced problems with the fact that I am of a certain religion and people don't seem to like that. They make jokes about it. They, put up nasty pictures and graffiti and stuff like that. I can speak for myself. I have experienced this in two places in the last 20 years. one of them was um, someone brought a calendar into my office while I wasn't there and put it on the wall. And that calendar for every month had a picture of a different kind of ape or primate on it. So, when I first walked in and I saw this calendar that had apes on every page, I wondered where that came from. But I decided to not react to it in the way that someone would normally react to it, because I had experienced some other racial taunting at that place, which I won't mention, for professional reasons, and also not to give people the benefit of knowing that it actually affected me at some point. But I used the calendar for its intended purpose. And because I did that, the person who put it there showed himself up and actually came to me and went into great depth about this calendar and conversation in it. And we finally got round to the point that he had put the calendar up there. We didn't go into the reasons why, but we just left it there. Now, things like that may sound minor, but they do have an impact on people. I've also had some racial graffiti, like "Go Back to the Jungle," written on my desk. Some of my staff, or at least one of my staff, used to work in, he was a cleaner, and he was a very well-liked person. He was really hardworking, always happy to help, never seemed to have anything negative to say about or anything or anyone. And everyone really liked him. He then found the opportunity for his skills to be recognized, skills that he came with from a different country. And but because by European standards, they don't quite fit into the structure of recognized qualifications, he found himself, like many people, doing jobs like cleaning and some of the jobs that other people don't want to do. A chance came his way and he was moved up into a different position, a much higher position, where his salary went up by probably about 10 or 15,000 pounds. And there was almost an immediate change in the way people were towards him. The conversations were not now about how's the family, how's it going, good to see you. The conversations were about now, so how did you manage that? Are you going to take these skills back home and use them there, or are you going to stay here? How long has it been since you've been home? And conversations like that constantly. So while we do all the policy things and the integration things of getting as many different kinds of people into places, so that, and then hope that by policy and just by some stroke of luck, people are going to get on, I think that is something we need to rethink. We need to look more deeper into the source of these prejudices. Now, fair enough, we're not going to fix this in 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. But we still need to look at it. We need to look into, what's the driving force behind this. So I challenge each individual one of you, doesn't matter what color you are. None of you are exempt from this. Doesn't matter what religion or race you come from. Doesn't matter what ethnicity you come from, what part of the world, what continent, or whatever. None of you are exempt from this. You need to challenge yourself. How many of you have any prejudices against anyone? Anyone? Any race, any color, any religion? Like I've mentioned some of my experiences. I'm sure some of you have had experiences as well. Now, I could go about my life being prejudiced against the entire race of that one person that showed me that side of racism, or what I perceive to be racism. You see, that's another thing, is it's not always about what you think it is. If you behave towards someone in a certain way and they perceive it to be racism or gender bias or an affront against diversity, then that's what it is. It's all about what the other person perceives it to be. So how many of you have, I'm not going to ask you, to actually say what they are, but just as a start, to show that we are committed to this change, what I'm asking of you is to have the courage, like I'm doing now, is to put your hand up and say, have you ever had a prejudice against anyone or anything? You may have experienced a horrendous experience, more prominent than what I've mentioned. There's many other things that I haven't mentioned, but I had a choice. And the choice was, I'm going to live my life holding this prejudice against everyone from that racial background that that person comes from. And I'm going to whitewash them with the same brush. Notice I mentioned whitewashed and not tar, because that's a common saying, tarred with the same brush. A lot of things that are negative or bad, the word black is used for them, like we had a Black Friday, which is a good thing, actually. Black Friday is a good thing. That's one of the things that blackness is praised for, Black Friday. But tarred with the same brush, the pot calling the kettle black, and things like that. These are all sayings that we've lived with for years, and people have said them. And in most cases, it's just a saying. No harm is meant by it. Absolutely no harm is intended. I've seen people being absolutely horrified when they realize that when they mention some of these things, some people take offense. Now, I particularly don't take offense to that, because even some of my family used to use those sayings and those words because they're just saying. So I'm not encouraging people to be oversensitive to everything, right? What I am encouraging people to do is be mindful of the fact that some people may be sensitive to this. And so there's a time and place for things, and you need to understand your audience and know who you're speaking to. So the change starts with you. And my challenge is to each and every one of you is to look deeply inside yourself. Look at the way you've interacted with people from different diverse groups. Look at your attitudes towards them, and look at your belief systems. You know, there's certain things that you may have grown up with that you just learned to do. Certain things you heard your parents say, or people you respect in your community may have certain views, and you've grown up into that and you've taken it on, and it's become a belief system and a way of life. So my challenge to you is to challenge that. Challenge those belief systems and look inside and see what you can do to be the change that you are looking out for in the world. Because we can't put the onus on policies and the people who make them. If we are in junior or middle management or less senior leadership positions, we can't just put the onus on everyone up there to come up with the policies and enforce them and make them happen, because enforcement may not be the answer here. Yes, there are cases where we need to enforce it. We need to take on a transactional type of leadership when it comes to it. There needs to be reward and punishment for these kind of things. People must not be allowed to get away with behaviors that are racial or that attack diverse groups, and that don't accept that change in the world. There must be a punishment for that, and I'm all for it. There must also be a reward and recognition for it. People might think, well, why should there be a reward and recognition? Because that's just the natural way of things. Is it the natural way of things? It's the moral way of things. It's the expected way of things. But it certainly isn't natural, because if it was natural, it probably would have been happening naturally by now without us having to put all this effort into it. So the challenge is for each and every one of you that form part of an organization or society. It doesn't matter what level or what role you play in that organization or society. My view is that it's your job, just like it is of the CEO, to make this change happen. And you need to start making the change happen in yourself. Start making the change happen in your family and your friends and the people you associate with, because until it happens internally for each one of us as a person, until we are able to honestly look at things, I salute the late Nelson Mandela for the work he did in his anti-apartheid work, in the work he did to not raise black people up, but to unite everyone. It's not about focusing on the victim. I know many people will disagree with this, but these are my views. And my view is that you can only raise society by all of us rising together. It's no good to raise one person and lower the other. If someone is higher than one for one reason or another, yes, in those cases, there needs to be a leveling up, not a lowering down. We need to level up. We need to aspire to the highest levels and take people up and not take them down. We need to focus on unity and not discrimination. We need to focus on fairness, equal treatment, and the ultimate neutralization of biases, unconscious biases. gender biases, racial biases, diversity biases, anything that has the word bias attached to it, that causes people to live a more subservient life or a life at a lower quality. These are things we need to be removing, and it starts with ourselves. It starts with our own thinking and our own mentality and our own belief system. So this is one of the topics that really gets me going. It's something that I have a lot of high energy about because of my own personal experiences and what I would like to see in the world ultimately. I know it's a dream, but Martin Luther King had a dream. Nelson Mandela had a dream. Barack Obama still has a dream. And while those people are light years ahead of me and I'm not anything compared to them or anywhere near them, I'm just doing my best to play my part, to neutralize my biases, to destroy my prejudices, to get discriminatory behavior out of myself, and ask you all to do the same so that we can all help society move in the right direction. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to giving you another talk in the near future. Thank you.